Okay, that mic's in. Got it in for me. Okay. At this time, because we've talked about the Patriot Act and the stuff that our congressman just voted for, at this time we are privileged to have one of the most exciting speakers and one of the most active and honorable patriots that we have amongst in our ranks, and that's Dave Pridgen. Is going to talk to us about the Patriot Act. So, Dave Pridgen.
Okay, this is kind of going to be like a four-part talk. I'll do the first part, then Scott DeLong, then Vicki, and then I'll close, okay? So I was going to start tonight with a YouTube video of Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. Have y'all seen that? Have y'all seen that video where he lies to Congress and he says that no American citizens en masse are not under observation? Y'all seen? Who's seen that video?
He said no, we're not
Okay.
authorized.
Search now on the internet for the Clapper video, and this is what you will see everywhere. It says the YouTube account associated with this video has been terminated due to multiple third-party notifications of copyright infringement. The video's now disappeared. All right, that video of our elected official, of our head of national intelligence lying to Congress has now disappeared off the internet. That is how serious this is all getting, where this is all going, in other words.
They own the internet.
So I wanted to start tonight by talking about the Fourth Amendment, because that's what this all boils down to. You know, what's happening with the IRS, what's happening with all of us now being spied on with our phone records, all of us having a dossier created on us on what internet sites we're going to. So the Fourth Amendment. Many of the items contained in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution were not just fine ideas conceived by our founding fathers, but they came about because of their direct experiences with the British Crown. Such was the case with the Fourth Amendment. The Stamp Act crisis of 1765 to 1766 was the opening scene in the first act of the drama of the American Revolution. In September 1765, the Parliament of Great Britain passed the Stamp Act. It was essentially a sales tax designed to raise revenue for the Crown by requiring revenue stamps to be fixed to printed goods and legal documents. These included newspapers, pamphlets, almanacs, licenses, college diplomas, even playing cards throughout the American colonies. One of the tools used by British revenue agents for enforcing the Stamp Act was the Writs of Assistance Act. Writs of assistance were court orders that authorized custom officials to conduct general searches of premises for contraband. The exact nature of the materials being sought did not have to be detailed, nor did the locations. The writs were first introduced in Massachusetts in 1751 to strictly enforce the Acts of Trade, the governing rule for commerce for the British Empire. The powerful new court orders enabled officials to inspect not only shops and warehouses, but also private homes. It quickly became apparent to many colonists that their homes were no longer their castles. In 1761, James Otis represented Boston merchants in their challenge to the renewal of the writs. He failed to convince the court, but gained public prominence in arguing that the writs violated the colonialists' natural rights. The writs were one of the list of grievances that the Americans harbored against the Crown and contributed to the process of changing loyal colonists into advocates for independence. The colonists protested that the writs violated their basic rights as British subjects. The colonists had numerous problems with these writs. They were permanent. So imagine a search warrant being permanent, okay? They were permanent and even transferable from one agent to another. A writ holder could assign them to another agent. Any property that could be searched, any property could be searched at the whim of the holder, searchers not being responsible for any damage to the property they caused. This put anyone who held such a writ above the established law. Thus, the Writs of Assistance Act let the king's soldiers write their own search warrants and bang down any door they chose in order to look for stamps or anything else they were looking for. It was the last straw. We fought a revolution. We won a revolution. We wrote the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't grant power. It keeps the government off our backs. The colonists' direct experiences with these general writs of assistance inspired the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which forbids general search warrants in this country. It reads, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath and affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized." Fast forward 240 years. Today, this important amendment to our Constitution has been trampled upon by the federal government in the form of the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was passed as an emergency measure within 15 minutes of completion of the writing of the text, without our representatives having read it in the wake of the terrorist attacks of September 9/11. What have we learned since then? They just passed the immigration yesterday without reading the bill once again.
You can't read it.
Its stated purpose of the Patriot Act was to aid law enforcement in the searching out of the terrorist element here in the United States. While abuses of the Patriot Act are numerous, I would just look briefly at two specific areas where abuses have been documented. The first is sneak and peek warrants. A sneak and peek search warrant is a warrant authorizing a law enforcement officer executing it to effect physical entry into a private premises without the owner's or the occupant's permission or knowledge, and to clandestinely search the premises. Usually the entry requires a stealthy breaking and entering of said premises. Under the Patriot Act, sneak and peek warrants are being used for the first time in the history of the United States. These warrants are not exclusive to acts of foreign and domestic terrorism, but are applicable to any federal crime, including misdemeanors. Testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee revealed that 65% of all sneak and peek criminal warrants carried out under the auspices of the Patriot Act were in drug cases that had no relationship whatsoever to terrorism. In a July 2009 report that was issued by the administrative offices of the United States courts to Congress on the use of sneak and peek notice search warrants, issued for the fiscal year 2008 under provisions of the Patriot Act. The report stated that in 2008, 763 sneak and peek search warrants were carried out by federal agents. Of that total, only 3 were for reasons stated as terrorism. Less than 0.04%. Now let's go, so these sneak and peeks continue to this day, and you can go through the Inspector General's reports. By far, 99 of 100 cases, they're being used in drug cases, under the auspices of the Patriot Act. Now the next one, national security letters. The National Security Letter provision of the Patriot Act radically expanded the FBI's authority to demand personal customer records from internet service providers, financial institutions, credit card companies, phone companies, libraries, without any court approval. In other words, the agents did not have to get the approval of a judge. These are the federal agents' self-written search warrants. Okay, so you get it? We've went 180 degrees. Just like the British soldiers were able to write their own search warrants, and the Founding Fathers, having experienced that, put in the Fourth Amendment. Now we have federal agents capable of writing their own search warrants. So we've totally went 180 degrees from what the Founding Fathers intended. I'm going to be running out of time here, so I'm going to have to skip a little bit of this. 2 years ago, I did a talk here on the Patriot Act, and I related to people several quotes from Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon. He's a Democrat and he's a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And we had to piece those quotes together because the people that are on the Senate Intelligence Committee, they're not allowed to reveal what happens in that committee. So you have to go through different publications and you piece his quotes together. This is what he said 2 years ago, and I want you to see how right on this man was about what was happening, okay? And remember, this is a Democrat. Quote, "I want to deliver a warning to you this afternoon. When the American people find out how their government has secretly interpreted the Patriot Act, they will be stunned and they will be angry," unquote. From another source, again 2 years ago. I'm talking about instances where the government is relying on secret interpretations of what the law says without telling the public what those interpretations are. And the reliance on secret interpretations of the law is growing, unquote. Another quote, "We're getting to a gap between what the public thinks the law says and what the American government secretly thinks the law says. When you've got that kind of a gap, you're going to have a problem on your hands," unquote. Quote, "I believe that when more of my colleagues and the American public come to understand how the Patriot Act has actually been interpreted in secret, they will insist on significant reforms too," unquote. Now I want to quote Ron Wyden from 2 days ago after all that's come out over the last month. I think I trust this man on this at this point in time, being the prophet that he was of what's all come about. Okay, so 2 days ago, after a hearing of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, he's, quote, "The National Security Agency provided inaccurate and misleading information to the American people about the government's vast surveillance operations," unquote. Quote, this is again from another source from 2 days ago, "We were disappointed to see that this fact sheet contains an inaccurate statement about how Section 702 authority has been interpreted by the U.S. government. In our judgment, this inaccuracy is significant as it portrays protections for Americans' privacy as being significantly stronger than they actually are," unquote. So once again, this gentleman's warning us, you know, here now that they're parading the 50 things, or they're talking about, because of all the surveillance on you, we came up with 50 plots that we ended. And this is my personal opinion. This is a campaign for liberty. I don't think any of this is about terrorism any longer, because if it was, those two Boston bombers, our government was warned by the Saudi government. They were warned by the Russian government. The CIA warned the FBI. The older brother's Facebook page was an advertisement for jihad, okay? And these guys weren't being watched, all right? It's not about terrorism. It's just about watching us at this point in time and the American government keeping us in line. Thank you.